You are being lied to about the European Green Deal. It is not just about saving the planet. It is the largest wealth transfer mechanism in modern history. And you are paying the bill. In this video, we expose the brutal reality of 7 European nations currently trapped in a financial nightmare. We will travel from the poorest borders of the continent, where many households still rely on wood and other cheap fuels to stay warm, through the sunny Mediterranean, where homeowners are being crushed by debt, all the way to the absolute economic engine of Europe, which just secretly tore up its own climate rules. What you are about to see goes far beyond the environment. It is about your savings, your home, and your future. Welcome to Amazing Europe. Number 1. Bulgaria. What happens when you force a first world climate agenda onto a population that is already struggling to pay the bills? The answer is a quiet economic slaughter. Let's look at the first 2 nations trapped in this exact nightmare. We start with Bulgaria. It is the poorest country in the European Union, where the average net salary sits under €1,000 a month. Yet, Brussels expects this nation to finance the exact same multi-billion euro green transition as Sweden or Denmark. The primary weapon here is the revised Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, the EPBD. The law forces member states to slash the average energy consumption of their residential buildings by 16% by 2030. It sounds great on paper until you look at reality. Millions of Bulgarians live in Penelki, massive, uninsulated concrete apartment blocks from the Soviet era. To hit the EU's rigid targets, the state must heavily retrofit these colossal structures. The bill? Between €20,000 and €40,000 per household. The government doesn't have the money to cover this entirely, meaning the financial weight ultimately crushes the property owners. Your family home is at risk of becoming a worthless, unsellable asset. Then comes the lethal blow, ETS2. Starting in 2028, a new European carbon pricing system will legally penalise the fuels used for residential heating. Right now, nearly 20% of Bulgarians already suffer from energy poverty, surviving the winter by burning coal, heating oil, and cheap gas. ETS2 will slap a carbon tax directly onto those heating bills, draining hundreds of euros a year from families who simply don't have it. Follow the money. Who actually wins? Banks offering renovation loans, foreign construction firms, heat pump manufacturers based in Germany, Sweden, and South Korea. The wealth gets sucked out of the local middle class and flows upward. Politicians will tell you not to worry. They promise that the EU's Social Climate Fund and local subsidies will cover the costs. But the truth? Bulgaria's chronic political instability has left billions in EU funds paralysed by local bureaucracy. The money isn't reaching the people. Bulgaria is ground zero for the green debt trap. But if you think stepping across the northern border offers any relief, you'd be wrong. Just next door, the exact same European directives are colliding with one of the highest home ownership rates in the world. Number 2. Romania. 95%. That is the home ownership rate in Romania. It is the highest in the entire world. Owning your home sounds like wealth. In Romania, right now, it is becoming a liability. Here is why. Romania did not build its housing stock like Western Europe. Millions of Romanians live in standalone rural homes, built by hand, with no insulation, no modern heating system, and no architect. Just walls, a roof, and a wood-burning stove. For decades, that was enough. Under the EU's new green framework, it is a financial time bomb. The Energy Performance of Buildings Directive forces Romania to dramatically cut the average energy consumption of its national housing stock. Unlike apartment blocks where renovation costs are split between dozens of families, these are individual homes. Insulation, new windows, a modern heating system. The bill for a single rural family can hit €15,000 to €30,000. There are no neighbours to share it with. Now add the transport dimension. Romania is the final destination for millions of used diesel cars discarded by Germany, France, and the Netherlands. Romanians bought them because they were cheap and public transport outside Bucharest simply does not exist. ETS2, the carbon pricing system launching in 2028, will tax the fuel in those diesel tanks directly. The commuter who spent €4,000 on a second-hand Volkswagen to get to work will face rising fuel costs with zero realistic alternative. Who profits? Multinational insulation suppliers, Western and Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers who need the old combustion market to collapse to sell their product, the banks offering the renovation loans. Once again, the financial gravity pulls in one direction only, outward and upward. Romania's government runs a program called Casa Verde, Green Home, promising subsidies for solar panels and heat pumps. When the application portal opens, the funds are gone in minutes, literally. Server crashes, bots, and back-channel connections determine who gets help. The other 95% are on their own. Romania does not have a poverty problem dressed up as a green problem. It has a structural collision between Brussels timelines and a country that skipped the industrial middle class entirely. And now we move west, because the green trap does not only spring in countries with low wages. In the next three nations, it targets people who thought they were safe. Mediterranean homeowners sitting on property they can no longer afford to keep. Number 3. Greece. Greece has sunshine 300 days a year. It sits on the Mediterranean. Its energy bills should be among the lowest in Europe. Instead, Greece ranks first in the entire European Union for energy poverty, tied with Bulgaria for cold homes, and absolutely number 1 for unpaid utility bills. That single fact tells you everything about how badly the current system is broken. Here is the specific Greek trap. Roughly 70% of Greek buildings were constructed before 1980. Most of them were built for the Mediterranean climate, meaning thin walls, no insulation, and heating systems running on diesel fuel. Not gas, not electricity, diesel. The Greeks call it petroleo, and millions of households still burn it every winter, especially on the islands and in the northern regions. This is where EU climate policy delivers its most direct punch. ETS2, the carbon pricing mechanism launching in 2028, will tax heating fuels. Diesel sits at the top of that list. Families already spending a disproportionate share of their income on heating will see those costs rise further with no cheap alternative readily available. But the real Greek story is what happened to the housing market before the green directives even arrived. Foreign investment funds, short-term rental platforms, and the EU's own Golden Visa program have driven property prices in Athens up at 7 times the rate of local income growth since 2019. The home ownership rate has collapsed from 77% in 2009 to under 70% today. The result is a brutal split. Older Greeks who still own property, inherited, paid off, irreplaceable, are sitting on buildings that must now be renovated to meet national energy targets. The cost runs from €25,000 to €45,000 per household. They cannot afford to renovate, they cannot afford to sell cheap, and they cannot afford to stay as bills keep rising. Nearly 20% of all Greek families, and over 43% of its poorest households, already report being unable to heat their homes adequately. The government promises that its Save Energy program will cover up to 80% of renovation costs for 1.5 million households. Independent analysts at the Green Tank confirmed in early 2026 that at least 1.6 million families need substantial support, and current plans fall structurally short. Greece is not a broken country. It is a middle-income country broken by a perfect storm of bad timing, foreign capital, and climate policy designed without a social stress test. Number 4. Spain. Spain produces roughly 60% of its electricity from renewables: wind, solar, hydro. On paper, a green success story. So explain this. Spain is 4th in the EU for energy poverty, with 17.5% of families unable to heat their homes adequately. This contradiction has a simple explanation. In Europe, electricity has one single price at any moment, always set by the most expensive source running. On a cold winter evening, when a gas plant switches on to cover peak demand, every unit of electricity, including the ones generated for free by wind and sun, is instantly repriced at the gas rate. Renewables do not make your bill cheaper, they make the utilities' profit bigger. The European Commission knows this. It admitted it years ago during the gas crisis. They even passed a market reform in 2024, but it failed to eliminate marginal pricing in the daily spot market. The structural flaw remains, and Spanish families still pay the same sky-high peak prices as everyone else. No solar panel fixes this without a fundamental reform of how European electricity markets work. Now add the buildings problem. Spain's housing stock is built for warmth, not insulation. Walls are thin. Summers are now extreme. Air conditioning demand has exploded, pushing consumption up in the exact season when pricing volatility peaks. In winter, millions of older Spanish homes rely on gas heating, which ETS2 will make significantly more expensive from 2028 onwards. EPBD renovation costs for a standard Spanish household run from €25,000 to €45,000. Between 2021 and 2023, Spain spent €40.8 billion, 3.4% of its entire GDP, in emergency energy subsidies just to keep families afloat. Those shields were being phased out until the energy shock of early 2026 forced Madrid to deploy a brand new €5 billion social shield, slashing VAT on gas, electricity and fuel back to 10%. The fifth largest economy in the EU needed emergency intervention twice to stop its citizens from drowning in energy costs. That is not a temporary crisis. That is a broken system. Here is the political paradox. Spain's government is one of the most aggressively pro-green administrations in Europe. It pushed hard for the 2035 combustion engine ban and opposed any softening. At the same time, over 55,000 Spanish workers are directly employed in combustion vehicle manufacturing, industrial communities with no alternative employer waiting, pushing hardest for the green transition while sitting on one of the most exposed industrial workforces in Europe. That is not hypocrisy. It is a structural dilemma that no government in Brussels or Madrid has honestly solved yet. Number 5. Italy. Italy tried, but it failed. In the middle of the pandemic, with the economy paralysed and millions of families locked indoors, the Italian government launched the most generous green renovation programme in European history, the Superbonus 110% and its sister incentives. The state would reimburse 110% of the cost of energy upgrades, more than the work actually cost. No cap on total public expenditure, no serious controls.
You serious?
The original estimate was €35 billion over 15 years. The final bill? €219 billion in 4 years across all building bonuses. €16 billion in documented fraud. Fake invoices, ghost renovations, criminal networks exploiting a system designed without guardrails. The Superbonus became the single largest driver of Italy's deficit explosion, pushing it above the EU's 3% ceiling in 2025 and sending public debt to 137% of GDP. And here is the brutal punchline. After spending €219 billion, the majority of Italian residential buildings are still in energy class F or G, the worst categories. The problem was not solved. The money is gone. Now Italy faces the next round of EPBD targets with empty pockets, a crippled renovation budget, and roughly 5 million worst-performing buildings still needing urgent upgrades. The human cost of this failure lands hardest in southern Italy. In regions like Puglia and Sicily, nearly 1 in 5 families lives in energy poverty. For many of these families, factory workers, retired teachers, small farmers, the house is not just a home. It is the only asset they have, the only thing they planned to leave to their children. Under the new EU framework, that house, old, uninsulated, energy inefficient, is becoming a financial liability instead of an inheritance. A burden, not a gift. Add ETS2 from 2028 onto a country with the highest car ownership rate in the EU. 70 vehicles per 100 inhabitants, millions of them old diesel cars with no electric alternative in reach, and the squeeze becomes total. Italy is not a poor country. It is a country that tried to fix the problem, failed spectacularly, and now has neither the tools nor the fiscal room to try again. If this is what happens to the Mediterranean, what is happening to the engine of the entire European economy? We're about to uncover two nations at the very heart of Europe's economy, and they're about to take a massive hit. Number 6. France. Italy proved that throwing bottomless subsidies at the green transition bankrupts the state. France proves the opposite. Regulating without subsidies bankrupts the middle class. France is the country of the stick without the carrot, and the stick is already swinging. Under the French climate law, millions of older, poorly insulated homes are officially classified as passoires thermiques, and the government is not just asking people to fix them, it is making them illegal to rent. Since January 1st, 2025, no landlord can sign a new lease for a property with a G energy rating. By 2028, the ban extends to F-rated homes. If you own a small apartment to boost your pension, you have a choice: renovate or watch your property become a dead asset. To soften the blow, Paris created MaPrimeRénov', a flagship grant scheme for energy upgrades. The reality? By mid-2025, the system was overwhelmed. To manage its spiralling national debt, the government drastically slashed the budget, leaving thousands of applications stalled. The math is brutal. The legal ban on renting stays, but the financial help has shrunk to a fraction of what families actually need. Millions of French homeowners are trapped holding properties they cannot afford to upgrade and are forbidden to rent. Consequently, the rental market is collapsing, driving up costs for tenants who already struggle to find housing. Now, add the spark that could ignite the country. In 2018, France burned. The Yellow Vests movement brought the country to a standstill over a green tax on diesel fuel that punished rural and suburban commuters. President Macron was forced to back down. But starting in 2028, the EU's ETS2 mechanism will impose a near-identical carbon tax on road transport fuels across Europe. Brussels is legally resurrecting the exact tax that sparked a French Revolution, applying it to a population that relies entirely on cars outside major cities. France is enforcing climate compliance through direct prohibition, stripping property rights from those who lack capital. If the Mediterranean is drowning in debt and France is paralysed by bans, surely the engine of Europe has the money to make the green transition work? Germany is the final act, and its numbers are the most devastating of all. Before we get into it, if you found this video helpful, please support us by liking, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. And since we're talking taxes, type tax in the comments if you want the full ranking of all European countries by tax burden. Number 7. Germany. This is the ultimate hypocrisy of the system. If the poorest countries cannot afford the green transition and the Mediterranean countries are crushed by debt, there is still one last hope. The engine of Europe. Germany, the architect of the Green Deal, the nation that lectured the continent on how to build a clean economy. Let's look at the master plan. Since the year 2000, Germany has spent €500 billion on its Energiewende, the transition to renewable power. The result? German citizens pay some of the highest electricity prices in the entire developed world. Wind and solar need massive new transmission grids, and the expansion bill is staggering, an estimated €650 billion in the coming years. Those costs are baked directly into the network fees paid by ordinary families. We explained the German crisis in more detail in this video, but the real earthquake happened just days ago, in May 2026. And it is the most revealing moment of this entire European experiment. For years, the German government tried to force a brutal transition on its housing stock. The infamous heating law mandated that all new systems run on 65% renewable energy, effectively banning new oil and gas boilers and forcing homeowners to buy €25,000 heat pumps. The public reaction was explosive. Support for the architects of the law collapsed, sweeping a new administration into power. So, what did Berlin do? It surrendered to the math. In May 2026, the new German government officially scrapped the renewable heating mandate. They tore it up. The nation that wrote the rulebook just tore it up because the political survival of its leaders was at stake. This is the ultimate hypocrisy of the system. Germany pushed Bulgaria, Romania, Italy, and France to accept rigid European directives that are destroying their middle classes. But the moment those same ideological rules threatened to break the German economy and its government, Berlin hit the emergency brake for itself. The €1 trillion European Green Lie is not about saving the planet. It is a massive wealth transfer mechanism. From the rural commuter to the urban elite, from the middle-class homeowner to the multinational utility. And when the bill finally arrives, the architects of the rules can afford to walk away. You can't. Unfortunately, let's not kid ourselves. New taxes are coming to pay for all of this. If you want to see the ranking of European countries by tax burden, type tax in the comments. And if you want to find out exactly how much your grocery bills have gone up over the last 10 years, check out the video on the right. That's all for today. See you next time.